Hi everyone, it's Katie and welcome to another deck review. Today I wanted to talk about the incredible Monstarot or Little Monsters Tarot by Joanna Nelson. Now this is such a gorgeous little deck that I've had for a couple of months now. I bought it secondhand, which I'm very happy about because the shipping to Australia was not cheap, but I am so very glad that I do have it because I've fallen in love. Everything about this deck just makes me happy, and I've just really enjoyed working with it. So it comes in this lovely 2-part box which just has these really cute little doodles on it, as well as our Monstarot logo here. And it's a 2-part box that's very solid and sturdy, opens up like this. And in mine came this cute little origami boat, which features quite a lot in this deck. You can see it on the front of the box, the book, and in the deck as well. Then we get the little white book, which we will talk about later, and of course the cards. The backing is super cute, it is reversible, and again we have these little origami boats that come up so often in this deck, with these little swirls and doodles, which I just love. The card is slightly larger than a traditional size, but they're still very easy to manage and hold in the hands. The cardstock is this lovely, not glossy but shiny, slick cardstock, and they're bendy without being flimsy. I really like this cardstock. I think it's very easy to shuffle. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart in your hands. It's sturdy, it's solid, but flexible and easy to shuffle. The cards are borderless, which is just beautiful, and these colors are just stunning. So we have this large borderless card with just at the bottom a simple white strip with the title of the card, making them very easy to read. The titles are very unobtrusive. I like it. This deck is just adorable. In some ways it reminds me a little bit of the Hezekos Tarot. Has a similar feel. Similar sort of colour palette, that kind of soft, pretty pastels, although these are a little bit more vibrant. And you know, the Hezekos is a fae world, a different world. And this deck with the little monsters, these strange little creatures, it does feel a little otherworldly as well. Although being very rooted in the Rider Waite Smith system, there's something very familiar about it as well. It's colourful, forthright, direct, and a little bit cheeky at times too, and quite playful, I found. With these colours and these creatures, the deck just feels really alive to me, and that's part of why it's so much fun to work with. Each of the little monsters, each of the creatures, they have their own distinct personalities. You know, they're all different colours, different shapes, they have different smiles and little teeth going on, and they all appear to be doing different things, but the deck still feels very cohesive. I think Joanna has managed to create a little world full of all these different monsters that have their own personalities, that are very individual, but they come together to form a world into which you can step and to experience. This deck has a sweet smile, but also has some teeth. I found it to be very caring and tender when it needs to be, and quite encouraging too. But I feel like it'll still give you a little nip, you know, if you're kind of engaging in too much bullshit. If you're bullshitting yourself, this deck will kind of give you a little nip and push you in the right direction. I've also found this deck to kind of really want to achieve win-win scenarios. Like, it's not so much about, you know, just telling you how difficult things are or what's going wrong. It's quite proactive. It wants to, you know, find some solutions to your problems, but it wants to do it in a really positive way, not in a fluffy way, but just in a way that is very productive and healthy. It wants to find a solution that is beneficial to all parties and is most useful and most successful and most satisfying to everybody, which I think is a really cool thing. It's a very holistic deck. It has a way of kind of helping me see the bigger picture and refocusing in on what's important. Another thing I've noticed about this deck that I really like is the fact that in so many of them we have kind of 1 or 2 main monsters, but then we also have kind of a couple of other little companion monsters, is the best way I can think to describe them. It's very rare that we see a monster or a character all on its own in this deck. Almost all of the cards have multiple little creatures, and they're often engaging with each other in really kind of tender ways. They seem to be supporting each other. There is a connection between each of the characters. It feels like each of the cards depict a symbiotic relationship, of these harmonious relationships. As I said, this win-win approach. It feels like they are demonstrating that in these images, where the monsters, you know, they want everybody to live in harmony. They want everybody to feel fulfilled. They want you to reach your best potential, but they also want to reach it themselves. It basically feels like each of these characters is working together and wants to work with you as well to create a really beautiful world in which people can feel fulfilled, in which people can all reach their potential. I know that sounds a little bit corny, but that's what it feels like with me working with this deck. It feels really optimistic uplifting, encouraging. It doesn't feel fluffy. If anything, it's the opposite. It's just very idealistic, and it's not going to settle for second best. Even though I was so drawn into this imagery when I first saw it online when the deck was released, I was a little concerned that it would be a bit too much of a novelty, that it would be a bit too cheesy or kitschy. Basically, that it wouldn't be a very solid reader, that it wouldn't really kind of provide useful, productive readings, that it might be a little bit too fluffy or surface level. But my experience has been almost exactly the opposite. It's been a really, really useful deck, and it's become one that I go to a lot. It's a very versatile deck for me, and I find it brings a kind of light to the situation without, creating a fluffy narrative to it. Interestingly, this deck also makes me think of culture and how, they say that culture is to us like water is to a fish. It's all around us, and yet it's entirely invisible. It impacts so much of how we experience our world, and especially how we frame and understand it. And I feel like this deck is almost an alien race, a benevolent alien race, who, comes to Earth and can solve so many of our problems because, they witness our history and our experiences, but they're also, removed and detached from, the heat of our experience and the weight of our history. And so they can, provide solutions, whether that's, to international conflict or climate change and global warming, whatever it is, having that detachment allows them to just kind of see how something can be resolved in a way that perhaps we aren't able to see or we're not willing to see. And even though I'm talking big scale here, I think that's also applicable to our own, personal lives on a personal level. These little monsters in this Monstarot have a way about them that is kind and considerate and validating, but also detached. When they're helping me personally, they're not weighed down by my baggage. Even though they're able to witness me and validate me, they're not consumed by the experience of my past traumas, even if they can appreciate my past and my history. They're not consumed by them or blinded by them. They're not weighed down by my history, and they also don't allow themselves to be burdened by my baggage. And in that way, I think they're almost the greatest ally you could have. Someone who can appreciate where you're coming from without buying into your own shit and calling you on your own shit, supporting you in a really productive way and pushing you to be the best you can be without invalidating you or pushing you too far. There's just kind of a really neutral, balanced approach that this deck brings to readings, I think. It just kind of presents things as they are. It shines a light on things so that we can see them in their entirety and to then approach them in a way that, is uplifting, in a way that is productive and proactive. It has a very bouncy sort of an energy to it that encourages the same from us. Given that it's so very similar to the Rider Waite Smith as well, it's very, very easy to read. If you know the Rider Waite Smith, this deck is will be an easy jump for you. Even if you're a beginner, I think you can definitely learn with this deck as well. It's perhaps not as symbol heavy as the Rider Waite Smith, but plenty of the symbols are still included, just in clever little ways. We do have the artist's signature in every card, although it's kind of included in the imagery, and it doesn't bother me at all. I know that might be a bit of a bother to some people, but it's very unobtrusive. It just kind of looks like a little extra detail in the card rather than, an obtrusive signature. In some of the cards, even just like the plant life is alive, or the rocks. We have a few cards where mushrooms are anthropomorphized, or trees, even if they don't have faces, their branches look like hands. They're doing things with their hands, their branches. So even if there isn't directly another monster in the card, more often than not, the plant life around it forms another character. The images are quite simple in many ways. They're not completely sparse, but the backgrounds, for example, aren't overly detailed, which is something I really, really appreciate. I don't have the greatest eyes, and sometimes cards that get too busy. The Shadowscapes is a very obvious example, or an extreme example, but sometimes I just struggle to make out different details. Whereas with these cards, the monsters are, front and center. We can really see what's going on with them and what they're doing, their facial expressions, their body language, all of that sort of stuff, without kind of those little background things getting in the way and confusing the situation. In that way, the deck becomes very clear and easy to read as well. The Little White Book is perhaps one of my favorite Little White books I've ever read. It would be up there with the Fountain Tarot for me, and that is because I really like what is included. The writing is quite small, so that may be a little bit challenging for some people, but that is because there's so much included in here. It is still a little white book, but I think if this was published by Llewellyn, they would pack in a bunch of white space and note pages and make it a full-size guidebook. Each card gets half a page of information, and we have very clearly at the top in bold the name of the card, and then we get 3 keywords for every card, making it, you know, easy if you just want to have a quick look, a bit of a jog of the memory. And then we have the artist's interpretation. So the artist explains what the art actually includes, which is part of why I like this so much. It actually describes what's going on in the card, which gives you some insight into why this particular artwork was chosen. And then we have the card meaning, which kind of just expands on what this card actually means if it comes up in a reading, the divinatory meaning. It's very direct language that is used as well, which makes it very, very easy to read and to apply to your reading and to your life. We do have one extra card, a bonus card in this deck, and it is the Illuminator, which is such a pretty card. I love this color, the colors that are used, and how it really lights up. You can see the light in this darkness. The Illuminator is a special wild card, the guidebook says, and will be exclusive to the first edition. So any reprints of the deck won't include this bonus card. And for the Illuminator, the key words that we're given are illumination, energy, shining the light of truth. And the artist's interpretation: the Illuminator stands tall on a mountain beneath a dark sky. He extends out his hands to the sides, and like magic, bursts of light appear and dance into the form of an arch over him, shedding a bright glow and illuminating his surroundings. Even in the darkest times, there exists within you an inner strength that can bring you hope when you need it. You are a magical being, able to withstand intense trials and travel arduous journeys in order to succeed. You are more than enough. The energy within you will power you when all around you falls away. So a cute little bonus card that you can either choose to include in your readings, either with that specific message that is provided in the little white book. You might even choose to use it as the significator, or of course you can leave it out of your readings entirely. So this is just ultimately a very charming, darling little deck that I have had so much fun working with. I think it's adorable, it's sweet, it's so pretty, it's beautiful, but it's also just been a really good deck to read with, to work with. I've done plenty of readings for myself with this deck that have all been very clear, easy to interpret, which can be sometimes a challenge when I'm reading for myself. Not always, but every now and then you're tempted to kind of read what you want rather than, you know, what the cards are really providing. With this deck, I find it very easy to just be somewhat detached and just get the message that these little monsters are trying to give to me. When reading for clients, I found this deck great as well, again because it's quite forthright and clear, but there is this level of detachment, not so much because the little monsters don't care, but more just because they're aware of this bigger picture. And so even though they honor the emotional experience that you're having right now, they're also able to, you know, detach from the hot emotions that are too specific to this current moment, and to kind of just draw you back out to regain perspective a little. That's been how I've experienced this deck anyway, and it's been an absolute delight. So I love this little deck, and I'm so very glad I decided to take the plunge and pick it up when it came up for resale here in Australia on the Facebook group. I think this is a fabulous Rider Waite alternative. Just has such a fun presence and a great personality, and it's just ultimately a very usable deck. So if you have this deck, I would love to hear what you think in the comments below, or of course if you have any further questions that I haven't answered in this review, please feel free to ask and I will do my best to get back to you. And until next time, so much love. Bye.